Hello, from Cork to the world. This is the Song Collector Podcast, brought to you by Roy Buckley Music. Episode 3. Nice to be back with you again. Roy's in studio with me for the Song Collector Podcast. Roy, great response to our interview with Mike Hanahan. You could stay talking to Mikey all day.
Mm-hmm. And he'd keep you talking all day as well.
And then he'd bring you out and he'd play music for you all night, and you'd have the worst hangover of your adult life the following day.
Well, I tell you now, man, I was just in Dublin a few weeks ago for Mikey's 60th, and never a true word was spoken. It was great, man. So many great artists turned up. The lads from Stockton's Way, and Pat Short was there and playing music and being hilarious. And
he's a very good musician, and a lot of people don't know that.
He's brilliant.
The man we're going to hear from today, now we recorded this the last time he was in Ballymaloe, but I remember a day you called me and you said, pull in the car. I said, I'm all right, I'm driving along, I have Bluetooth. You pull in the car. And you told me I've Coulter for 3 or 4 song collectors nights?
4, he came and did 4 with us, yeah.
Tell me the story how you got him, because the first time you went looking for him, you were told where to go with yourself, weren't you?
Well, that's what happened. I rang the office and I wanted to get him down. I was doing the shows for a couple of years with all these great Irish artists, and I mean, he's one of the kings. And yeah, I just reached out, and the office said, no, not going to happen. Stop bothering us.
Who are you? Block his number.
Yeah, somebody called the cops. So I said, okay. And then I called back the following week, and I spoke to Phil himself.
Right.
And we had we had a conversation for maybe 20 minutes, half an hour on the phone, and straight away he got what I was doing, you know, and he said so. I love this idea, I love what you're doing, promoting songwriting and Irish artists and all that, and he said, look, let's park it for a week or 2, we'll get back to you and tell you for what the result is going to be. So to be honest with you, I kind of thought, that was a nice way of saying go away. And then about a week later I got a phone call from the office, and Phil wants to do 4 shows with you, you know, he likes your idea and whatever. And I was delighted. He came down, absolute pro. Gigs were great. We did a couple of nights in Cork, and we did in Kerry as well. And he's just magic. The stage presence, how he puts his songs across, how he holds the crowd in the palm of his hand when he's whispering, you know, like just between the songs. I love the little anecdotes, and I love how they speak about how a song came about, or who recorded this. Always like, you know, a funny story, or some little just avenue they bring it down. Now,
and Phil is the best there is at that.
He's brilliant at it.
For 2 solid hours, songs and stories, and he never so much as hesitates for a second. It's just so...
It's brilliant.
It was so kind of Phil. He invited us backstage at Ballymaloe half an hour before the gig, and we just sat down and chatted. Mm-hmm. Let's have a listen.
In my memory, I will always see the town that I have loved so well.
At what point in your life did young Philip Coulter decide, I'm going to write songs for a living?
Probably when I got my first song recorded, which was by the Capitol Show Band way back in 1900 and Frozen to Death. I don't know, it was 60 something or other. I was still a student at Queen's in Belfast. Let's say it was like early, maybe 64 maybe, 64. A song called Fooling Time. And when that went into the charts in Ireland, actually, PJ, from then on, I probably became unemployable. From then on, my fate was sealed. That was it. You know,
how do you mean unemployable?
Because I didn't want to work for anybody else. You know, I didn't want to have a job. This is what I wanted to do. When I saw that, you know, I can write a song that gets in the charts, which was one of my very earliest attempts. It has to be admitted. It wasn't a great song, but I mean, it did the business back then. It got me a record. It got the Capitol Show Band to record the first original, because then all the show bands were making covers. It was a very brave thing to do on their part, something which I really appreciated. But what I appreciated even more was that it got into the charts.
And that was a big thing then, because you had to sell a lot. You had to shift a lot of plastic to get into the charts.
Exactly. I mean, it's a kind of top 3 record or whatever. But I mean, it was the whole principle: getting the song recorded by anybody, but particularly by a band that would have been regarded in Ireland as one of the most musically adept, and for me, a band that I would have a great musical regard for. So that was a great kick-off. You know, from then on, that whole songwriting thing became more than just a notion, and yet. And that is what bought me, and that's what got me my chance. That's what bought me my start in London with Phil Solomon, who was an impresario. He was a manager. He managed the Bachelors. He managed they were his biggest act, and he managed a whole bunch of acts. But he also kept an eye on emerging Irish acts, because the Bachelors again were 3 Dublin lads. So he would keep his eye on what was emerging in Ireland, and he'd signed the Capital Show Band. He was going to set record deals for them, etc. And I kind of fell into that loop because I was in London at the behest of the Capital Show Band. After Fooling Time had become a hit, they were doing their next session of songs, and Des Kelly, the leader, asked me, did I have any more songs? Well, I didn't have any more songs, but of course I said yes, of course. I began writing them right there and then. So the great spin-off from that was that it got me into London, albeit temporarily. We were only there for like 3 or 4 days in Pie Studios. But Phil Solomon came by the studio and heard enough of what I was about. I mean, I was going through the new song and showing the guys what to be playing and stuff. He got enough of a sense that this guy's got something going for him, that he asked me when I was finishing in college, and when I told him, he said, right, come and see me when you're finished. I was good enough for me. As far as I was concerned, I was in the music business. Yeah. So that was the classic gap in the hedge that every songwriter just, you know, you got to recognize it as a gap in the hedge and an opportunity, and B, you have to have the courage to go through it. Like a lot of guys, when an opportunity presents itself, they don't fully comprehend that this could lead to something. In itself, it may not be a big deal. It's not going to earn me $1 million, but in itself, it may not be, but it's going to be a road to somewhere, who knows what. So you have to be smart enough to, hey, this could be worth doing. And then you have to have the smarts to jump in the deep end. You have the courage to do that. And that's where a lot of songwriters fall down, you know. Anyway, I jumped in the deep end, and 2 days after I finished university, I was knocking his door in Wardour Street in London. Of course, I was full of that kind of conviction, confidence that youth has, and I thought it was going to be just a matter of weeks before I'm kind of arranging scores for major orchestras here. I ended up arranging sandwiches for the office girls for most of the time, and instead of like actually writing arrangements, I was carrying scores for other arrangers and copying their work and preparing songs for print, which used to be the big thing even back then. Yeah. You know, the charts at one stage were compiled not by the number of records sold, but by the numbers of sheet music that were sold. That's where the charts started. Anyway, I digress. So I find myself in Phil Solomon's office, but then I was a musical dog's body. You know, I was supposed to be writing songs, doing arrangements, doing copying, doing messages, delivering tapes, whatever. But listen, I come out of the tube early in the morning, like at 9:30. At Piccadilly Circus, and I looked around and I saw the London red buses and the London taxis and the neon signs in Piccadilly Circus, and I've been 5 minutes walking so to my office, and I think, fuck, I'm in London, I'm in the music business. Yeah. You know, I'm going to my offices now, a music publisher's office. Yeah. So I didn't care that I was a dog's body. Yeah. You know? I was doing what I wanted to do.
You were learning your craft from the ground up.
Can I just take one step back from all that again? When you were like a kid, and did you grow up in like a musical family, or was it like how did you decide what was the passion that drew you to learning the piano in the first place? And I know you played a bit of bass guitar as well back in.
I did. I played bass guitar in a couple of show bands. There was a piano in the house, and music would have been part of the kind of fibre of life in our house. My father played the fiddle. He was from County Down, by ear. My mother vamped on the piano, also by ear, and occasionally actually she was vamped to the same tune that he was playing, which was a rare occasion. But that didn't matter because, you know, music was happening, it was a living thing. So You'd have to also appreciate that in Derry, music was very much part of the fibre life in Derry. And here's the thing, that in Derry, it was not a strange phenomenon for guys to be making a living from music. That was the big difference. You know, a lot of guys playing in show bands, even a lot of semi-pros, but music was not something that was just kept like for church on Sundays or for the music festival like once a year or whatever. That this, you could actually earn a living from this. You know, that, I mean, it wasn't that a light bulb suddenly come on in my head, but that I was aware of this all the time. You know, I knew of so many bands, you know, of varying degrees of proficiency from Derry. But even the semi-pros were making money.
So another thing, the whole folk side of it is a big part of my life. I love all your great songs, from The Turn Loved So Well and Scorn Out of Simplicity and Steal Away and Donegal Danny and all those other great songs. How did you? Where did the introduction to meeting the Dubliners or Jim McCann, or even collaborating with people like Ralph McTell or Albert Hammond and that, where did those connections come?
I was doing a radio show not that long ago, and the presenter said, I've just been doing the research and the homework on the prep for this interview, and he said, I'm looking at your output, your songs. Just, anybody looking at these songs would think they'd been written by two different songwriters. Yeah, was the point he made. You know, and I understood what he was saying, because I've had a kind of a parallel existence, you know, alongside of the pop songs and you know, that kind of output, and the Bay City Rollers and the Eurovision and Elvis Presley and whatever. I have always had a passion for folk music. I mean, even growing up, and I was a huge fan of the Dubliners for years as soon as I became aware of them, I would have had an awareness of Scottish music as well, growing up in the north of Ireland. So it was the opportunity. I mean, in specific terms, the opportunity came when Noel Pearson asked me to produce the Dubliners. He had taken over the management of the Dubliners just when they were at a pretty low ebb, I think, even from a morale point of view and creatively and musically. They'd had the big hit, of course, the big hit with 7 Drunken Nights, which was a double-edged sword, because, of course, it got them on top of the pops, it got them a high profile, but it turned them into a cabaret act. You know, the boys were tired doing working men's clubs in Scunthorpe and Grimsby, you know. They'd had a lot of that. And that wasn't really the audience that they would have chosen. Witness the fact that Kelly, in subsequent years, wouldn't sing Scorn Out of Simplicity at live Dubliners gigs, because he just felt that was not the right milieu for it, that there wasn't going to be the right appreciation or the right respect for it. But anyway, so the Dubliners had been through that period, and they were at a bit of a low ebb, I think. Anyway, Pearson told me, I've taken over the Dubliners, but they're very kind of tired, you know. And they've kind of lost a bit of spark, and I need a little bit of freshness put in there, maybe a different driver, you know, somebody who can maybe inspire them to do something a bit fresher,
a different avenue or something,
bring something fresh to it, you know, which I jumped at the chance. I mean, even though at that stage I had a lot of records in the charts and I produced a lot of hits, etc. It was very funny. Like when I took over the Dubliners, they were singularly unimpressed by all of that. Didn't cut any mustard with them at all. But for me, it was a great avenue, great opportunity to get in the middle of all of that, you know, with folk music and stuff, and to have Luke Kelly's voice, you know, to be working with, or John Sheehan's fiddle playing, Barney's banjo playing, just be able to harness all of that and trying to bring something fresh into it. You know, I mean, one of the early sessions. The amount of preparation, that was something else that I learned from the Dubliners. I unlearned what I'd learned about making records. Everything had to be, you know, all your prep had done beforehand, rehearse. But as Ronnie Drew used to say, that the Dubliners rehearse on stage. Yeah, and they're you know, following that through this logical conclusion, they thought they should also rehearse in the recording studio. So it was very hard to get them to rehearse beforehand. So a lot of stuff happened. They got off the, you know.
Would this have been around the time that when they were recording songs like Joe Hill? Because I know you brought in the piano element.
Funny, that was something I was just thinking of an example. Kelly, we were in the studio, Mayfair studio, and we're going through different potential songs, and Kelly starts with Joe Hill, a song I wasn't aware of. I said, sing that again. I said, great. I love the Americana and that. He said, yeah, he's a big American hero, blah, blah, blah. I said, well, You know, I'm hearing something different from what you're doing to it, and I put that kind of the piano lick around it,
Dun, 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 dun. Yeah.
which has now become part of something that's associated with the song. Now, I would have to say, Kelly jumped at it. You know, he was all over it. He loved it. He was brave enough not to have those folky constraints. You know, that some of those fingers.
He had a very deep musical brain, didn't he, Phil? Luke Kelly.
He came back from England from being with Ewan McCall and all those great guys.
He had a great, he had an encyclopedic knowledge to begin with, and a great passion about his music, and a great integrity. Luke wouldn't sing a song unless he believed in the song, you know. So he was open to do fresh things. Few of the dubs would have been dragging their heels a little bit. Kieran Burke was the real folky, you know. He's the Gaelegore from the West. He sang as Gaelic and stuff. He was a bit not sure about the piano or what Coulter was doing here. Sheehan had to be kind of dragged along a bit too. Ronnie was just kind of cruising along, as was Barney. Barney didn't have any opinions one way or the other, but it was Kelly who was driving all of that and that freshness. And then I remember doing the thing, the Captains and the Kings with Ronnie, and I put a cello on it. You know, things like that just brought a little kind of fresh ingredient to the Dubliners, and as far as they were concerned, those things which were new to them. You know, they weren't new per se, but within the context of the Dubliners, they were new. So that gave them a little bit more of a challenge and a kind of a little bit more of a spark. So it was a very productive time. Very productive time.
Something that must have been a massive challenge for you, because I remember you speaking about it at a concert one time. Is it true that you were running the show for Jesus Christ Superstar production?
Oh yeah, well, I was the musical director for that. Yeah, and
funny story about that.
Oh yeah, there are lots of them, but some of them are not retelling on an honourable programme, I guess. But yeah, Kelly, again, as an indication of Kelly's gameness, you know, he took on the role of King Herod while I was the musical director. And that, again, I suppose, was part of that whole adventure, you know. I hadn't done anything like that before. He certainly hadn't done anything like that before. Jim McCann, the same. You know,
there was an like Joe Mack was in that, wasn't he?
Joe McCarthy, he took over from Luke when Luke could only do it for a couple of weeks and then had to go back on the road with the Dubs. So Joe Mack took over.
Wilkinson, so there's a lot of great guys in there.
Colin Wilkinson, he was drafted in from a blues band. I mean, he had no track record. I mean, none of them had any track record in terms of like the theatre. None of them, not a clue. So it was a real bunch of randomers, and it was pretty chaotic to begin with. The only way to make it, I just bullied them, and I have to confess, I bullied them and roared at them and shouted at them to get some kind of semblance of order, because otherwise it would have been like herding mice at a crossroads. You know?
You knew what you wanted out of it. You knew that what was in the room could give it to you, but they didn't know how to put the two together.
Exactly. I mean, a talent is one thing, but there has to be a bit of discipline and a bit of application, especially in the theatre. There was a shape, you know. I mean, the band couldn't vamp for like 7 bars while Luke was figuring out where he was in the song. I see, look, this is an orchestra, Luke. You've got a 4-bar intro, which means 4 bars. You've got to start on the downbeat of bar 5, you know. And if you've got a dance routine to do as well, tough luck, but that's the way it goes.
Just to move slightly from the folk world, you know, just as a songwriter myself and stuff, I just that phone call. I know that when you pitched My Boy to Elvis Presley and you didn't know whether he was going to do it or whatever, and Albert Hammond called you from Las Vegas. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, that phone call was, you know, people talk about the phone call that changed their lives. I mean, the phone call from Des Kelly of the Capital Show Band when I was still at Queen's to tell me they were going to record Fool in Time. That's one of the phone calls that changed my life, most assuredly. The phone call from Albert, I didn't know, no, it wasn't that we had pitched the song to Presley at all. I had written the song with Richard Harris in mind. I'd agreed to produce an album with Richard Harris, and it was a kind of concept album about a relationship, the tentative beginnings, and then a love affair, and and then a kid, and then the marriage breaking down. And My Boy was the kind of pivotal song. So we had a moderate success with the Harris thing. The single was like top 20 in the album, the same. Didn't set the world on fire, but we toured America for like 5 weeks, 6 weeks with a 35-piece orchestra, which was a brave thing to do, especially with Harris, who was like party animal par excellence. But anyway, that all Harris went back to making movies. I seriously thought of checking myself into St John of God's for rehab for a week or two after 6 weeks on the road with Richard Harris. But rather than the whole thing dying, I thought, well, it was a great experience, and I've learned a lot on the road with these 35 musicians. I brought about 5 London-based guys, and the rest of them we picked up one orchestra in New York, another one in Chicago, another one in Atlanta, and another one out in Los Angeles, and then put them together with the 5 cornermen. So that was a great experience, and I had no regrets at all. I said, well, even if that's as far as it goes. So it was a real bonus when Albert Hammond called in the early hours to say that he had just been to see Presley in concert in Vegas and that he was singing My Boy. I hadn't been aware of it. Because that's Albert's opening. Phil, it's Albert, you lucky bastard. That was the start of that. Because songwriters, it was part of the mythology of Presley that, trying to get through all of his layers of protection to get a song to Presley at all was regarded as being like an impossibility.
And who gave it to him?
He heard it. Nobody gave it to him. That's the whole thing. Normally, that would have to be pitched by promotion men from publishing houses, and then it would have to go through his management. And somebody wanted a piece of that, and somebody wanted. You could end up giving most of the song away if you were pitching it to Elvis Presley. And guys would have happily given Elvis Presley 90% of the song to say Elvis Presley recorded my song. I can tell you right now, Elvis Presley got no piece of My Boy, not a dollar. Because he didn't look for it. He wanted to do the song, that was the difference. He had heard the Richard Harris version, and he himself was going through that kind of rocky period in his marriage, so he could relate to what the whole story of the song was. So he chose to do it, not me, not anybody. We didn't pitch it to him. He chose to do it, and that was the first I was aware of it, that he was doing it in his set. Then weeks, maybe even months went by before he got around to recording it as a potential album track. Then it was released finally on an album, and it was the radio guys in the UK who picked My Boy off that album as the plug track. They started playing My Boy. So RCA London pulled it off as a single. That's the first time ever in history of all of Presley's releases that it was the UK that dictated back to America what the single should be, because they'd got a hit.
Isn't it a huge achievement, though, as a songwriter from Ireland, from your beginnings and going to Queen's University in the north and everything, to Elvis Presley recording one of your songs, and to be, am I right in saying, one of the only non-American songwriters?
Yeah, there have been other non-American songwriters who've written songs that Presley has recorded on albums and stuff, but I'm the only non-American who's written the top 5 single for Presley. At a time when, his career was beginning to go into decline, so to get a top 5 record with Presley was a big achievement. But listen, just to have Presley record my song, I'd have died happy, let alone that it became a big hit. And it is, Roy, it is absolutely, it's something which I would never take for granted. To this day, when I'm driving along in the car, maybe on a late night radio show, somebody will play My Boy, I still get a tingle because there's Elvis Presley singing my words,
But you've did so much and recorded and produced with so many really, really big artists. So I want to ask you this: how do you, go from being associated with Elvis Presley to working with one of your buddies, Billy Connolly?
Well, again, you see, there's a lot of people who look at me from outside and think this guy's schizophrenic. How can you possibly be working with the Dubliners in the month of January and the Bay City Rollers in the month of February and Billy Connolly in the month of March? But that's me, If I thought my whole career... Listen, if I had thought when I won Eurovision, my purple period with Eurovision, with Puppet on the String, congratulations, and then, 4 years later, coming fourth for Luxembourg.
And all kinds of everything. Did you produce that for that?
I was a publisher and producer of that. But if I had thought that's it, I've got this Eurovision such, this is what I do. If I'd allowed that to define me, I'd have been in a sorry state. Equally so, when I was in the middle of all the teeny bopper thing, it was Mike Chapman of Chin and Chap. They were producing Mud and Susie Quattro and blah blah, and we had our stable of the Bay City Rollers and Kenny and Slick, and we were competing with each other to get records on the charts. There was a 3-year period when either Mike Chapman or I, not a week went by that we didn't have a record in the top 50. Wow. Yeah.
I remember it was the first time I heard the name Phil Coulter. I was a massive Bay City Rollers fan, and I remember buying their album Once Upon a Star.
Yep.
And I said, hang on, he's Irish. Hold on, there's
what's he doing on here?
Exactly, what's he doing writing their songs? That's how I came across. You're writing at the start, and then I realised you're writing from Slick and you're writing for Kenny and all those.
So again, if I thought of myself then, this is what I do now. I'm a teeny bopper writer. Again, I'd have been in a sorry state. So you've always got to be open to opportunities. As I mentioned earlier on, you got to see if you get a phone call, say, would you have a shot? I mean, I got a phone call from Frank Lynch, who was the manager of Slick. We were currently number one with Forever and Ever, and Frank called me up, A, to congratulate me on having a number one, but B, oh, by the way, I need a favour. Yeah, what's that? He said, I need you to come up to Glasgow and produce an album with another act that I'm representing called Billy Connolly. I said, I've never heard of him. What does he do? He says he's a folk singer, but he's very funny. I remember saying, Frank, are you having a laugh? Slick are currently number one. I got to get their follow-up written. I've got the Bay City Rollers breaking in America. You want me to come up to Glasgow to record a folk singer that thinks he's funny? That's so. But Frank, persevered and said, well, I think of this, that, blah, 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 and he's done this and blah, blah, blah. So there was something in the back of my mind said, this is so off the wall. This is so left field that I should do it. I mean, it's 2 days out of my life. Let's go up and see what this is all about. Now, look, if I hadn't done that, that's not to say Billy Connolly wouldn't have had the big career, but Billy Connolly's initial thing was through his albums,
It was the Humble Bums. Was it after that?
It was after the Humble Bums. After the Humble Bums. Yeah, after the Humble Bums when he emerged as Billy Connolly. Then, he'd sing a few folk songs, put the banjo down, tell a few gags, lift the banjo up and sing a few more songs. But it didn't look on paper like it was that unattractive, especially, if you're getting hits and you're number one on the charts. Bill Martin, my partner, said, what are you doing that for? Equally, he said, when I took on producing the Dubliners, Bill Martin said, what are you doing that for? Because it didn't seem to be mainstream, geared to the charts or gauged to the cash register. You see, I've always looked at it like this. That those kind of, you look, the Bay City Rollers and all the teeny bopper stuff, or the England World Cup squad, or whatever it might be, they were all commercial. That's the mainstream. That's what you do when you're a pop songwriter. That's your direction. Anything else is just a distraction. Until I got to the stage where I'd established enough of a kind of a base doing that I could afford to go a little bit sideways. So the things at a tangent, I often figured that all of this main track was for my bank balance. That was for the bank account. This stuff was for me. This stuff was for a bit more like keeping faith with me and my own passion. Whether it be the Irish folk music, or my quirky sense of humour, where somebody like Billy Connolly appealed to me. But embarking then on that course with the Dubliners, to get back to one of your early questions, Roy, that then kind of eased me into a different. I was on a different radar now all of a sudden. So now, in short order, I suppose the sequence I can't quite remember in terms of chronology, but I think probably having done that with the Dubliners and got my feet onto the table there and been comfortable in that world and established a few credentials in that world, I think Planxty were my next big undertaking. That was a whole different ball game. I
remember Mickey McConnell. It was said I had the pleasure of doing the gig with you in Kerry during the summer, and Owen Hand introduced you on stage, and he said that Mickey McConnell, who wrote Only Rivers Run Free, had said that had you not discovered it and put it out there with Planxty and everything, that the song might never have got to where it came from. So
yeah, well, it was nice that Mickey credited me with giving it the shot. I said, short memories come very cheap in this business, but it was nice that Mickey remembered that. But the Planxty thing, there was a bigger challenge, a very, very different challenge. That was a lot of preparation. That was a lot of precision. That was a lot of, going back to the whole Sean O'Reilly, the principle about it is not just five guys sitting down and start 1, 2, 3, 4, let's go. It was like almost like orchestration within five guys. It was very deliberately orchestrated with those textures, and that was more challenging as well because unlike the Dubliners, who were five just roly-poly, easy-going guys, the Planxty guys were very kind of focused and very very intense. I mean, it was the journalist Sam Smith who, talking about Andy Irvine, said, "Oh yes, Andy Irvine, the man who put the angst in Planxty."
Phil, what I'm hearing from you throughout all of this is that maybe some advice you'd have for young people, say like Roy sitting here next to me now, and other people getting into the songwriting business is turn nothing down if you think you might be able to add something to it.
Oh boy, you can't get precious. You can't get precious. That's the last thing you want to be saying. No, it's like it's not what I do, or I haven't done that before, or it's kind of a bit too cheesy, or it's a bit too commercial for me. No. I mean, until such times you get you get established, and you have the luxury of making those decisions. You're right, PJ. I mean, you just more than ever now. You got to be on the scan for what opportunities are, and get in there. You know, Roy and I've talked about this before. How it's imperative now for somebody who wants to make a career in the music business to be a self-motivator. It's not all going to fall on your lap like through YouTube, you know, and all of these kind of things. And in the world of the kind of singer-songwriter, you just got to be out there. You got to be doing it. You got to get on people's radar, whatever it takes. Whatever it takes.
So Phil, just because PJ brought up the topic, for anybody who's going to be listening to this podcast, if they're beginning to write songs or if they're more established or whatever, when you take your songs, like obviously those powerful songs like The Town I Loved So Well and stuff, when, you know, I know some songs come faster than others and stuff, do you work on it for a while, and if you feel like maybe it's taking a bit of a dip, would you go away from it, or would you stick with it, or would you go away and come back? Some songs might take you half an hour, another song might take you 10 years, you know. Would you have any advice for any songwriters?
Well, yeah, again, you're right, some songs come more easily than others. I'd say something like the tune of Congratulations probably came within a couple of hours, and once I got the idea of da 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 da, not a title like I Can't Forget You, Do You Remember, I'll Always Love You. Could have been any one of those. If it had been any one of those titles, it would have rocketed into obscurity. It would have died in its arse. But the fact was, I was looking for, I wonder, is there a word that would go da 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 da? And I remember going through the little rhyming dictionary. I said, there must be a song called Congratulations. But there wasn't. So once I came up with that, then that song wrote itself. The Town I Love So Well took months. Again, the melody probably within a couple of weeks. But then given how highly charged, you know, the world was up in the north of Ireland at the time, and given that the big risk was if you just kind of stepped a little bit over the line, just by a few ill-chosen words, that song could have tilted over and become another rebel song, which was exactly what I didn't want. So, you know, that took time, but that needed time just to kind of, you know, digest all the different nuances. Or Ireland's Call, same thing. Tune came readily enough, but just trying to get away of being all-inclusive, which was the whole kind of buzzword then of the North and the South, without, you know, I had to shy away from expressions like, and United, Ireland United, we'll go. No. Because the whole point of this song is to not alienate the North, not alienate the Unionists. So there would be buzzwords there that you'd have to knock on the head. United being one of them, or wearing the green, we'll do this. Just be careful. So again, that took a lot of work on out in terms of being aware of the sensibilities of the people in the North. The light bulb came on when I came up with the 4 proud provinces, because then it wasn't the 32 counties or Ireland United, this and so that worked. So either of those songs, you know, when you're starting off, they're going to take time. That's one project. If you're trying to write like a catchy pop song and 5 weeks later you're still working on it, throw it in the bin, because it ain't catchy anymore after 5 weeks. You know, if it hasn't got that bit of zip at that stage, it isn't going anywhere. You know, if you're labouring at a song for 5 weeks, you know, I'm going to tell you something. It's going to sound that you've been labouring at it for 5 weeks. You know, if it doesn't have a kind of a natural spring to it, my advice would be don't beat up on yourself, and don't try and breathe life into a dead horse.
So nowadays, as the songwriter you are, and all your accolades, I mean, it's amazing the amount of work you've did for Irish music and international. I mean, you I said this to you before, you give us younger guys, just watching you, your delivery of songs, between your songs, what you speak about, how you lead one into the other and all that's a craft in itself, and you've nailed that down. So do you work on that a lot, or does it come natural to you?
The whole trick is to make it look as if you're making it up as you go along. I mean, and anything that looks that easy is never that easy, you know. That's
Long
why.
race make it look easy
Yeah,
to
of
say,
course,
you know.
great player will make it look easy. I can remember Perry Como, who was a big matinee idol, used to kind of sing and be kind of scratching his eyelids. God, this guy doesn't care, but he's just. Val Doonican was one of the best at that on the rocking chair. You got to make it look comfortable. Then your audience aren't going to be on edge. But it's it's not easy. I mean, if I'm putting a set together, I'd spend as much time figuring out how am I going to link song 2 into song 3 or song 7 into song 8 that I would have with song 7 and song 8 themselves. And that's just taking a pride in the profession of being an entertainer, which is a different one from being a songwriter. And because you're a great songwriter doesn't mean you're a great entertainer.
Okay, so these days, what inspires you to? What would make you, prick your ears up and say, "Hey, I'm going to write about that"? What takes you these days? What does it take to make Phil Coulter write a new song these days?
Oh, the simple answer to that right now is a lot more than it would have done like 10, 15 years ago. And I know I would be very reluctant just to write on a whim, say I'll write that song and I'll put it on a shelf. I have a very basic belief that a song only really becomes a song and earns its corn when it's been recorded and when people become aware of it or when it's out there. The last thing the world needs is another song sitting on a shelf.
Okay.
If, Phil, the curtain came down, and we hope you'll be still doing what you do for a very, very long time to come, and we'll happily carry you on stage if we have to. You can count on fellas like me to do that.
Big lads.
Is there one song, one moment, one person, one phone call that it was all worth it for at the end of the day?
Yep. Standing in a box in the Royal Albert Hall and hearing Luke Kelly sing The Town I Love So Well for the first time. That was the moment. That was just that compared with like sitting in the audience in Vienna at the final of the Eurovision Song Contest and hearing my song Puppet on a String be declared the winner. Of course, that was a magic moment. First time I played in Carnegie Hall was a magic moment. First time I played in the White House, magic moment. But just for in here, for just that validation of me as a songwriter who had written a song that was going to be around when I wasn't around, and a song that had a bit more meat than Puppet on a String or The Babysitter Doors. That was the moment.
For what's done is done, and what's won is won, and what's lost is lost and gone forever. I can only pray for a bright, brand new day in the town I love so well.
You're listening to the Song Collector podcast, brought to you from Cork, Ireland, by Roy Buckley Music. The man's a legend. I could listen to him telling his stories about the songs all day. And to think that one at the end where he says to us that it would be all worth it to do it all again just for that one moment in the Royal Albert Hall.
What I loved about that was how fast he said it. He didn't even really
Didn't have to think.
Everything. Elvis, Eurovision wins, everybody covering his songs across the world, international hero, and straight away to say that. I think maybe being a proud Derry man and having a voice like Kelly doing that, I think if I was standing in that box, my hairs would have been standing on the back of my neck as well, Jesus.
Now that conversation that you had with Phil on the phone a few years ago has led to. I've seen the two of you together. It's like he's taken you under his wing a little. He has become very important to you.
I've been very lucky, PJ.
Yeah.
I've been very lucky with crossing paths with all these guys, Mikey, Phil, whoever. Like these guys are a phone call away if I need to ask something. No, of course you don't be ringing guys every week or anything But I mean. We've had a few good times. I mean, I've been out in Cork City matches with Phil when his son was playing on goal for Longford, I think it was at the time. And the first time I met Christy Moore was with Phil Coulter. He's the guy who introduced me to him in a field in Coulter at 1:30 in the morning. Imagine that. Nobody would believe that. Like walking through a field in Coulter at 1:30 in the morning at this thing that the O'Reilly family do every 7 years for Sean O'Reilly.
Yeah.
And this is a testament, again, this is stuff you don't hear about Coulter and Christy Moore and Glenn Hansard and so many others all turned up to do this thing. for Sean O'Reilly that happens every 7 years, and they didn't start. Phil didn't start till 4:30 in the morning. Christy Moore didn't start till 5:30 in the morning. Same with Glenn Hansard, like the middle of the night, and all of them doing it for nothing.
Yeah.
Just turn up out of respect for Sean O'Reilly. I think that's why Phil came and did the shows, because he sees what I was doing, respecting all of this Irish artists and
The
stuff.
craft of songwriting, as he talks about.
But that's in there. But it's very rarely in the entertainment industry or the showbiz industry, whatever you want to call it, that you hear the nice things that people do. Bad news travels an awful lot faster, doesn't it? And those are the lovely things. Like another time, Ralph McTell, The Streets of London. He also wrote Clear to Hear. He wrote The Grand Affair as well for the Furies, and so many other beautiful songs. I woke up one morning, I had a text from Phil saying, Ralph McTell is doing a gig in Cork next week. There's 2 tickets there for you. Make sure you say hello. And I didn't realise how close those guys actually were. I knew that they kind of knew each other over the years, but this is another side of Phil with collaborating as a songwriter. Of course, he did a load of work with people like Bill Martin, but one song ever himself and Ralph McTell collaborated on. It was a song called I Love the Ground She Walked Upon. I had great pleasure of singing this with Phil, and they wrote it for their friend Jim McCann, and it was a big hit for him. And then I discovered, Albert Hammond.
Yes.
One of my favourite songwriters in the world.
What hasn't he written like?
He only writes classics, they say, and it's true. So you're talking The Air That I Breathe for the Hollies, Free Electric Band, and Never Rains in Southern California. You went to see Leo Sayer recently, When I Need You. He wrote that for him. Good Looking Woman and Make Me an Island for Joe Dolan. They wrote one song together, Albert and Phil. It was a song in French. But
In French?
In French, yeah. And Tommy Swarbrick from the show bands and all that. Tommy is a great promoter, and he brings over Albert and people like Smokey and all that. And Tommy invited me in to meet Albert in the Opera House a couple of years ago. So I got that Las Vegas story about my boy from the other side as well when Albert told me. And I'm looking forward to seeing his show next week as well in Cork.
We invited people last time to send us music, and straight away, a good friend of ours, Dave Brown, the Flying Fingers of Dave Brown, has come back to us and said, lads, we'd love to give this a spin.
Hang on, you see that guy? He is nuts. Absolutely nuts. You know this. I know our listeners might not know this.
This is before he gets on stage at all.
This is before he does anything. Yeah, so he wakes up nuts. Imagine that. So, I'm conscious of time on this, but if I start talking about Dave and his Guinness World Records, it's going to be another few minutes.
That's for another show.
Well, hang on. Let's get. I have to say,
because we have to get him in here at some stage.
Okay, we will get him in, but for the song I've picked, it's called "This Is My Home." It's one of their new songs. How that song came about is Dave Brown and Dave Rooney emigrated. They're now the resident house band in Rera, which is an Irish venue in Mandalay Bay in Las Vegas. And right now there's for the last couple of months there's a production company following them. They just broke a 3rd Guinness World Record, PJ. The record was 50 gigs in 50 states in 50 days. And the boys smashed it. They did 60 gigs in 50 states in 35 days. They're nuts. I told you they're nuts.
Yeah.
And the tour was called This Is My Home Tour. And that was the theme song of the tour. And I thought, you know what, let's give that song a spin for the boys. I mean, that's colossal.
I can't wait for this documentary.
I know Rooney is coming to Dublin to do a part of the documentary about where the boys came from and who they've played with and all that. And then I'm going to be in Vegas for a bit of this documentary with the guys too, and that's kind of one of the reasons why I wanted to be there again. Coupled with the fact that it's going to be absolutely bloody crazy doing that. A couple of gigs around America with Browner. Always is.
Okay, let's have a listen. This Is My Home.
Somewhere in here, my heart holds the time for those passing years. In all of its glory and all my fears, I finding no ending and no frontier. Letters and cards from those who I missed and right from the start. The ones who I have kissed and broke their hearts. Look at me now when I walk right by. my home, and I've been away for far too long from my home. Coming back now, the bad feeling's gone from my home, where the love is in my home again. This is my home, and I've been away for far too long from my home. Coming back now, the bad feeling's gone from my home, where the love is in my home again. Did I not cry a tear for the crocodile? But I'm not crying now, 'cause I'm not them, and they're sure not me. And I won't change for anyone. How can you hear the sound of those voices singing across these foreign skies? Await your return, but to their demise. You're walking in circles, oh why, why? Why, oh why, oh why? 'Cause this is my home, and I've been away for far too long from my home. Coming back now, the bad feeling's gone from my home, where the love is in my home again. This is my home, and I've been away for far too long from my home. Coming back now, the bad feeling's gone from my home, where the love is in my home again. Long is the night, and you're starting to find what you said, but you're not gonna give in. You're crying inside, and it's so hard to hide from the way that you really are feeling. And here's something I believe in. This is my home, and I've been away for far too long from my home. Coming back now, the bad feeling's gone from my home, where the love is in my home again. This is my home, and I've been away for far too long from my home. Coming back now, the bad feeling's gone from my home, where the love is in my home again. Here I stay for the rest of my days, 'cause this is my home.
You're listening to the Song Collector podcast, brought to you from Cork, Ireland, by Roy Buckley Music. That's a hell of a song, isn't it?
Yeah.
Great song.
It takes the whole in Irish. It's the American dream. Coming from Temple Bar gigs and everything. No, don't get me wrong, the boys' credentials in Ireland are great, working with everybody from the Woods Band, which was Terry Woods from the Pogues, Ronnie Drew, a load of people across us, an awful lot of genres.
And he comes over and back quite a lot, even though he's married now in the States and all that. So, and they have a baby and all that.
Yeah, he does, himself and Aisha, and Holly is there as well. Yeah. And he's so mad. For the last Guinness World Record he did, we were all part of this thing in Las Vegas. 15 and a half days, non-stop, round the clock, 24/7, for just over 2 weeks to break a world record. And his wedding was 2 days after that.
The next time he's over home, as they say, we're going to get him in for a chat. But when you go to Vegas, what I want you to do is take a recorder with you.
I will.
And I want you to. I want him to do some guitar, so that you can bring it back, and we'll do it on an episode here. People can hear just how fast this bozo can play the guitar. It's incredible.
It's crazy, yeah.
Something we forgot as well. You're back on stage with Phil at Christmas time.
I am. I certainly am. I'm man. What a thrill that is. You know, I was at home about a year and a half ago, I'd say, and I just got a message from Phil. Right, I'm in Spain doing some songwriting. I'm doing a gig in Kerry in my van next Tuesday week or something like that. Will you come down and do a couple of songs with me? Jesus Christ. What are you going to say? Like, you know, yeah, definitely down there in a heartbeat. And
You'd walk if you had to.
Since then, I've had such a pleasure of performing a couple of songs with the man. Like, I mean, as he said in the interview, the only non-American songwriter to write a top 5 single for Elvis Presley, and I get to share a stage with him. Man, that's the stuff dreams are made of, you know, for a young fella like me from Ballyvalan. Yeah, definitely. And I'm looking forward to being part of his show again this year in Cork.
Roy, again, it's been a pleasure. Next time out, I think we've got John Spillane in the house,
We certainly do.
and that's a fun interview. And he brought his guitar as well.
He did. John is never too far from his guitar, is he?
Yeah, no. So we look forward to that. But for now, folks, keep listening, keep liking, keep sharing, and keep telling people about the Song Collector podcast. And should you want to send us a song, the email address is
songcollectorpodcast@gmail.com. Keep sending in the stuff. I'm loving listening to it. I really am. Make sure the quality is high as you can. Live from a desk even works as long as the quality is high, because we can't give it a spin otherwise.
So it's got to be at least MP3, preferably WAV, but good quality, and we'll get
But
it
I'm still
played.
delighted people are sending
Yeah.
stuff. I'm hearing magic things
And you
from
know,
people.
if we get enough stuff, and just before we go, because time is short with this, if we get enough stuff, we'll actually do a special show with stuff sent to us. So keep it coming.
We will. We might even do a special live show.
Now, that'd be interesting. Till next time, from Roy and me, take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the Song Collector podcast, brought to you by Roy Buckley Music. Now please share the link with your friends.